Thank you for joining us, everyone, today. So, ASEAN is host to an abundance of sun, sea, sand, and tourists. For many of the region's member nations, the tourism industry contributes a large chunk to each of these countries' economies, such as Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines, and of course, Thailand. The number of global visitors is projected to continue to increase as travel becomes cheaper, technology improves, and people just have more money to spend as a growing middle class emerges. But with such a dependency on the travel industry, is that growth actually going to be sustainable? I would like to start off with a quick poll, and I'm going to take Thailand as an example, considering the country has hosted the largest number of foreign visitors among the ASEAN nations. As the Prime Minister of Thailand earlier this morning had mentioned, last year Thailand welcomed about 38 million foreign visitors to the country. And this year it's forecast to reach 40 million. So how many visitors do you think Thailand will be receiving in 10 years' time? So we're going to wait for the live votes to come in. We can see, wow, that's a large number. 75 million. No one's guessing 55 million, huh? Wow. Well, the right answer, well, there's no right answer right now, but the World Travel and Tourism Council is estimating that the total number of foreign visitors that would possibly be coming to Thailand in the next 10 years is going to be 65 million tourists, which is equal to the population of the United Kingdom. So I'm going to start off this panel with the first question over to Angie. What opportunities does the Royal Caribbean Cruises see in the ASEAN region?
Thank you. Well, I certainly hope a portion of those 65 million visitors to Thailand come by a Royal Caribbean ship. If you look at the global cruise industry, we sail across all the brands in the industry, 30 million guests a year. 4 million of those are from the Asian region, and that's about a 5% year-over-year growth. But the real opportunity in this region, this is where the growth is, and this is where all the brands are focused, especially Royal Caribbean, because cruise is a pretty new concept. I mean, how many people in this room have taken a cruise? Okay, see, we got to work on that. But so there's a huge opportunity, and so we are going to bring millions of cruisers to these countries that you represent. And so I'm very happy to hear that this is a topic, because we hate to see these beautiful beaches closed. And at a Royal Caribbean, we're the largest global cruise brand in the world. We have 26 ships, $1 billion USD assets that sail the world. And when we go to these places, they have to be beautiful and pristine in order for our guests to enjoy it. And so we look forward to partnering with all the countries in Southeast Asia on how do we do that together. Because the future of our economy and the profitability of tourism is never going to change. So we need to start figuring out now how we can build this together in a very sustainable way. So whether you're a hotelier, or you provide supply goods, we need to think about how we build an infrastructure to make this successful.
And John, what about for the luxury hotel sector? How does Capella Hotel view ASEAN?
Well, ASEAN for us is our backyard. It's our home, actually. Our company is based in Singapore, and so we are homegrown, and we will continue to develop and focus in this region primarily. For the very same reasons that Angie mentioned, here in Bangkok in particular, a destination that's growing year over year, we see, of course, a great opportunity, particularly because, to be honest, Bangkok and Thailand, in our opinion, has been undervalued. For decades, it's a value destination. Somewhere relatively inexpensive, you can come and have a tremendous multi-layered experience. In a way, we feel that it's overdue, and consequently, the development that you see, such as this beautiful property and the roads that opened recently, are examples of that.
And over to you, Eric. We've seen a lot of the tech industry influencing the tourism industry as well, with Airbnb, Expedia, TravelAdvisor. Whereas with Klook, you guys list travel activities on there. How do you see the tech industry shaping up the tourism industry in the next 5 years?
Yeah, well, I think if you look at the entire travel industry, flights and hotel has been quite well consolidated. And it's also a rather standardized product. But what we focus is at Klook is the in-destination services. And in fact, I think that's it's the sector that gives the most headache to a traveler when they go to a destination, figuring out how to book, where to book, what to book. And that's what we come in to make that process a lot more seamless. But most importantly, I think our role is to help the local partner, the local supply merchant partners, to flourish in the tourism industry. The growth that we've seen with, for example, Thailand, behind the numbers, I'm sure majority of the growth is driven by the millennial travelers. Also, coming from within Asia rather than from the US and Europe. I think, for example, when we look at the travel industry in Asean, that industry has been built to cater for the Western market. Actually, when we entered this industry, that was the turning point. Most of the growth right now is coming from Asians, from China, from North Asia, and even within the ASEAN market. And they are also younger, very different from the Western market, which we used to be servicing a baby boom market.
The sustainable aspect of tourism. Angie, we were discussing earlier about the closures of beaches and kind of the environmental impacts. We've also seen reports that a lot of the cruise industry giants have contributed to quite a bit of air pollution in Europe. So how does Royal Caribbean Cruise plan to address these concerns in Europe and while you're expanding over in Asia as well?
Yeah, so there have been a lot of really dramatic headlines in the news recently, but it's not something that Royal Caribbean is reacting to now. Royal Caribbean has been a leader and focused in environmental sustainability for the last 20 years. And so we've been a leader in hiring scientists. We invest millions in creating new technology and new ways of being a responsible global citizen, especially as it relates to the water. And so every one of our ships have an environmental officer. And on our ships, we basically have recycling systems. We have shredders, balers, compactors. And 75% of our waste never reaches a landfill. In fact, we're probably more environmentally friendly than most cities are. And the focus on that is to get it to zero waste in the near future. From the fuel standpoint, there's just not enough liquid natural gas available across the world in order to supply the ships. So we're really focused on what we call emissions abatement. And so how do we make the fuel that we're burning the cleanest possible? And we have emission purification systems that remove 98% of the sulfur dioxide. We've created technology that basically the ship floats on a bed of air bubbles so that it goes smoother through the water and reduces our fuel usage. And then the condensation that comes from the smokestacks and the heat from that we use to power the hot water in our laundry. So we are incredibly focused of using everything within our means to be environmentally friendly. And we're working with CLIA, which is the Cruise Lines International Association, to create global consistency around the requirements, because not everyone works to the level of what Royal Caribbean is doing. And we work above and beyond compliance, but we want to invite cruise lines, but as well as hotels and everyone that plays a part in tourism to invest in this. It costs millions. It's very expensive, but it's not going away, and the sooner that we can partner on this, the more successful we can be at finding solutions and creating efficiencies in the cost of those solutions.
And do you feel like there's been more attention from cruise passengers and customers on the issue of sustainability?
That's an interesting thing. So our headquarters is based in Miami, Florida in the US. We've been around for 50 years. So we're very established in the US and in Europe, and so there is a lot of focus on that from the guests. I've been in this region for close to 2.5 years within Singapore and China, and the consumer isn't quite as interested yet, but we're starting to see a little bit of an interest, and that's encouraging because it is the way that we need to behave in the future.
I have to say that on the hotel side, the consumer is extremely aware of it. It's just, it's such, even in the premium, someone paying 20, 30,000 baht a night still cares what sort of impact you have on your immediate environment. So it's an evolution, right? It comes over time, but it's definitely prominent for us. For us, in particular, at Capella, we, as a group, we partner with a group called EarthCheck. And here in Bangkok, in fact, we plan to be the first zero landfill hotel and zero plastic, which seems, it's very easy to say, we all do the no plastic straws, but when you start to look at every possible item that's delivered in plastic or that contains any kind of plastic, it's tremendous. It's huge amounts. So very much, as Royal Caribbean, top of mind in terms of how we operate and how we open hotels in particular.
I see. How much does plastic really cost for, how much costs are you saving on or cutting out in terms of plastic, in terms of monetary value?
Well, from an operating perspective, it's more expensive, unfortunately. Over time, that will change, I think. But to be truly impactful and sustainable, as in zero plastic and zero landfill, it costs money. Because to purchase a straw that is reusable, to purchase, to convince a supplier to deliver their goods in anything but plastic, it's an investment for them. So, of course, the supply chain it gets impacted. So I don't have a quantum, but I could say easily 15 to 20% in terms of cost growth or additional costs for that effort. But it's important and it's definitely worthwhile. It's an investment.
I see. And on Klook, Eric, you mentioned that a lot of the users for your app is mostly millennials, which are, as a lot of people will know, one of the most environmentally conscious target. How is Klook going to be? Is Klook going to be promoting more sustainable activities on its platform, or what kind of sustainable practices will Klook be looking into?
Sure. I think on sustainable tourism, I look at it in two ways. One is, I think we touched on earlier about the over-tourism concept. The over-tourism to me is, in fact, to some extent, they're relative terms. It depends on where the travel is really concentrating to. So if they're all going to the Grand Palace in Bangkok, yes. But can we divert that traffic into the other places? Originating from Hong Kong, we've seen that actually, where suddenly you have a huge influx of tourists just going to one place in one spot, that is really kind of disruptive to the local economy and the local life. So 2 years ago, actually, we ran a pilot program in Thailand to drive travelers to outside of Bangkok, into the surrounding areas. So we've developed itineraries, we've developed marketing content to promote Khao Yai, which is a town outside of Bangkok, and a lot of, for example, Hua Hin and so forth. And we've seen tremendous success with that. So today, for example, we used to have 100% of our activities in Bangkok. Now, Bangkok is only about 60% of that, 40% is now in the surrounding area of Bangkok. And so we're driving the travelers away from just staying in Bangkok. And with that success, we've recently partnered with the TAT, with Thailand Tourism Authority, to further promote that, not just around Bangkok, but into Phuket, into the north of Thailand as well. So that, in one way, how we can help to address the over-tourism. The second part of the sustainable tourism, I would say, is to be more conscious of the environment and, of, for example, animal care. And we've seen that actually developing in Thailand. In a lot of the Chiang Mai and southern Thailand, we do a lot of the elephant camps. In fact, we're seeing more such sustainable caring for the elephant rather than the riding on the elephant to just have that experience. And we are now sharing the best practice that we've seen with our partnership with a few of those camps and further develop that into other regions of Thailand. So that would be the two ways that we address it.
I totally agree with you on the diverting the traffic And that's exactly how when we go to these destinations, that's what we try to do as
Yeah.
well. Because when we're bringing 5,000 to 6,000 guests into a city for a day, you want them to kind of spread out amongst the destination. So
Yeah.
totally agree with that.
Maybe Royal Caribbean Cruise can partner up with Klook.
I aspire to be as cool as a Klook product one day.
Look forward to that.
For Klook, I'm just kind of curious. I mean, the main audience, customers, and people who are using Klook are mostly millennials, right?
Yes.
So, do you expect that maybe in the future, maybe like 5 years' time, I might be able to see my parents using Klook, or like someone like more my grandma if she wants to go over to Macau? Is
Yeah.
it possible that we could see the tech industry evolving to the point where it penetrates more than just one market?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's definitely possible. And I think we've already seen that shift. And in fact, internally, we always say that when we design the product, being the app and the website, our intention is to make sure that my grandma and your grandma is able to use that app rather than just ourselves. So I do see that trend. And I think, even, let's say, not to go too far into my grandma, but like just my mom, she would be right now booking the flights and hotels online. But indeed, it is the itinerary planning part that put them off from traveling by themselves or traveling with let's say, with my dad or with their friends. So with the access of the Klook services and the platform to make that so seamless that you don't have to pre-plan it, but you can also just go to the destination and just open the app and discover what's around you, and to be able to make that booking right away, so that you probably don't need to communicate too much with the vendor. Or payment could be a big problem. Let's say for Chinese people coming to here, they'll need the WeChat and the Alipay and the whole Asian market as well, right? They might be using the GCash or the GrabPay, but when they go to China or when they go to the US, then there's no such thing, right? So we become that bridge that's able to bring all the different cultures and businesses all around the world to exist on one platform.
And this question is directed to any of you. How has the US-China trade war impacted your businesses?
Well, I can take the first one. I think it has had a negative impact for us from the US angle, from a US inbound angle, but that is not our main business, so we actually more so benefited from that. I think if you just look at the numbers, China outbound to the US, for the first time in 2018, the growth, well, no longer growth, but decline over 5%, versus since 2003, it's always been on an increasing trend. So that definitely has an impact a bit on us, but instead, we're seeing the growth picked up from short-haul travel. So definitely within the region of Hong Kong, Taiwan, but also the Asian market. So we definitely benefited from that instead.
Yeah, I would agree. So our product out of Singapore is primarily sourced from the Asian region. So people still want to take holidays despite what's going on in the political arena, and they should. But where we did see a little bit of a slowdown is in some of our corporate business. So corporations will hold events and meetings on board our ships, and so they'll be a little reluctant to lock in their commitment for their time frame based on either local elections or based on if they're impacted by what's going on in China, US.
So Prim, for us, we're in a fortunate situation that we're almost wholly dependent on leisure travelers. So we do not really have corporate travelers, which I believe from colleagues that have more corporate-driven hotels are more impacted by that. So we really have not felt any impact at all. Of course, the leisure traveler from China continues to travel fervently, and we have no properties in the US. So.
I mean, it's still a small minority of Chinese population with an actual passport, right? So it's still poised to grow with like Chinese visitors coming.
Absolutely. And within the region, as in the previous talk, you look at Vietnam, the growth is tremendous. Having lived there 4 years as well, it's an incredibly dynamic economy, more and more travelers going out and spending disposable income on travel. It's good for us, for sure.
One last question, Angie. Is there any market that you want to take cruise tourism into in this region?
All of them. All of them. Call me.
Wherever you can park a boat.
But I'll introduce you to it by inviting you to Singapore. We are hosting a corporate kind of look-through in November. So if you're interested, contact us, and we'd love to introduce cruising to you personally or to your business.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, all three of you. This is just about the amount of time we have today, but we will be having a very, very special guest right after this, so please enjoy.